I think it's very hard to argue, given the type of society that we are living in now, it's very hard to argue that people are happy when we actually look at the statistics and social sciences that we have out there. I don't think people are doing very well. On the other hand, it's arguable that every time and place has these crises also. But as somebody who, I lived in a Bedouin culture, and what really struck me in living with Bedouin is I didn't see anybody that had any signs of depression. Like the people that I lived with in West Africa were deeply rooted in faith and reason. This was one of the rare examples in human history of Aboriginal nomadic people that had a scholastic tradition. So I actually studied inside a tent Aristotelian logic with a Bedouin teacher, which is really amazing. And I'll just give you an example that in the Islamic tradition, there's a 4th century scholar, Abu Bakr al-Baqallani, who came up with a unique atomic theory of the world. And Putnam, in his book on the history of atomic theories, actually argues in the chapter on Islamic atomic theory that this is a unique theory, that it doesn't come out of Greek thought. And a lot of it's based on Euclidean geometry and the concept of a point, but I remember once this student was trying to understand what he meant that the world was made up of atoms. And my teacher, he took a handful of sand and he blew it. And he said, if the veil was lifted, you would see everything look like this. And so here's a very primitive people, on the one hand, a very primitive society. But on the other hand, they were grappling with some really, really sophisticated ideas. And it made me wonder, what was it like in the great centers of civilization, like Baghdad and Fez and Tunis and Damascus? If this is the Bedouin remnant of that tradition, because Mauritania is one of the last places that really has this scholastic tradition, that they're holding on to it. And so I think the importance and centrality of rooting things in reason for the Abrahamic peoples was so central to the tradition. What's happened now is because of a loss of real metaphysics, and as you know, the most fundamental metaphysical question is, why is there something as opposed to nothing? And this, most people don't really, that idea does not occupy their thoughts, but if they would allow it to occupy their thoughts will automatically make an exponential leap from where they are in their unexamined existence to really having a difficult question put in front of them. And I think modern people don't realize how profound that question is. And then the other thing I would add to that is, because science, as you know, the science today is the only acceptable methodology to examine reality. So empirical science is the only way that we can really examine reality. That philosophy in its medieval sense of the word, or even ancient sense of the word, is seen now as really meaningless statements, that it's purely speculative thought. And that's because the idea, if we're in this church and this is all we know of the world, we don't know about Princeton, let alone New Jersey, let alone the United States, let alone the planet Earth, let alone the universe. We're just in this church and we've been here all our lives. And this is all we've ever known. And if somebody escapes and comes into the church and tells us there's a whole other world out there, most of the people in the church would find that very difficult to believe, if this is all they've ever known. And one of the problems with modern thought is they deny the possibility of ever getting outside of material reality. And yet thought itself is an immaterial reality, and therefore thinking about it is already being outside of it. Because consciousness, no matter how hard they try, they have never proven that consciousness has a material basis.
This is, I think, the important aspect of